Welcome back to A Timey Wimey Pod, where we watch every episode of Doctor Who from 2005 onwards. My name's Rebecca,
I'm Haley.
and today we are discussing Series 3, Episodes 4 and 5, Daleks in Manhattan, and Evolution of the Daleks.
Yes, we have arrived to a very interesting two-parter.
This two-parter, there's so much happening. It's a lot. Is this one of the worst Dalek stories of the show?
I would say yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, are you ready for some fantastic facts?
Yes, I am.
So, this story was written by Helen Rayner and directed by James Strong. It aired April 21st and April 28th, 2007. Rayner was the first woman to ever write for New Who.
That is actually really cool.
Yeah. She was previously a script editor for the show and then got to write this because Stephen Moffat, who we know and love, was going to write this story, but he got really busy. So he ended up writing Blink instead, and Helen Rayner wrote this. So without that little bit of timing, we might not have gotten Blink.
That's actually crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm. An original plot of this episode had the Doctor and Martha starting their investigation, looking into pigs that were being stolen from cargo ships and reports of moving lights under the water, which would have, of course, turned out to be the Daleks.
But how would they be able to see the moving lights of the Daleks underwater?
What do you mean?
Isn't that what you just said? That they would see moving lights underwater and that would be the Daleks. How could they see that? Like, were the Daleks swimming in the water?
Yeah, they were, I guess.
Oh. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay. But yeah, I get why they cut it out because it's very separate, but it would have been nice to have an explanation that that's where the pigs come from.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have that explanation. I'm still caught up on the sea thing, and I don't know why I am. I don't know what other alternative there is besides the Daleks swimming in the water. Like, why else would there be lights? But yeah.
Fair enough. Also in early drafts, the action took place in a Prohibition-era speakeasy with jazz music instead of show tunes and Broadway music.
Okay, now that I would have loved to have in place of what we ended up getting.
I'm conflicted. I really like the musical theater elements and the performances, but a speakeasy would have been really, really fun.
I think for me, and I won't get too into it right now, but I think for me, it's more everything combined. Like, if it was like the theater and the show and that whole aspect, and then a completely different alien storyline, probably would have loved all of it together. But for me, it's just, it doesn't work well because I feel like the downfalls of the Daleks and this two-parter just overshadows every other thing that's there.
I completely agree. I think you're hitting on some really good points. Also in this version of the script, in the Prohibition speakeasies, Laszlo was going to be in the Mafia instead of just some nice random guy.
I'm not going to lie, a Mafia storyline would have been really fun in Doctor Who, even if it made no sense, honestly.
It would have been fun. But Russell wanted the musical theater soundtrack, which is why they scrapped that idea.
Is he the long-lost friend of Amy Sherman Palladino?
He might be. I could see that. They would get along so well.
They would. Honestly, if they worked together on anything, I would be terrified for everyone.
Petrified. Now, we've already talked a little bit about it and shared a little bit of our thoughts, but let's get more into it. What are your overall thoughts of this story?
Okay, I'm going to start off with what I love. We get Andrew Garfield, icon. Mm-hmm. Love the character of Solomon. Love Laszlo. And I do like the theater aspect quite a bit. And I like the aesthetic. I like the vibe. I like Tallulah. But Everything else, I don't like. I don't like the concept of the Dalek human hybrid. I mean, on one hand, it's kind of interesting to think about and like what that would look like and how that would impact the Doctor, which we see in this two-parter. But one, I don't care enough about it, and two, it just weirds me out. I'm sorry, Dalek. I don't like the design of Dalek. I will just leave it at
Me
that.
either.
And I don't know. Like, I understand the Doctor wanting to work with Dalek and willing to work with him, even though Dalek was literally the instigator of Doomsday. I digress.
We're still holding that grudge.
We are. And like, I mean, Dalek was becoming more human and having like some compassion and like telling the other Daleks to not exterminate the Doctor and how they shouldn't have
Mhm.
exterminated Solomon. But I don't know. I just feel like the Doctor working with Dalek was a very idealistic perspective to have, and I feel almost like the Doctor was naive, which I feel he isn't typically naive when it comes to the
Mm.
Daleks. Even though this was like a new situation, he had never experienced it before. He saw a creature that always hated actually have some compassion and becoming more human. I don't know. What are all of your thoughts on this two-parter?
Yeah, this is an interesting story. I do usually skip it if I'm being honest.
Same.
But there are things I like. I think the cast is really great. I think they're really fun. I like the theater setting. I really like the Hooverville setting. I think that's really interesting. Love Solomon. We get some great moments from David Tennant. And yeah, it's just the Daleks that don't work. This is just such a weak Dalek story, and everything from like the humanoid Dalek to the pig people to the human Dalek soldiers at the end of Evolution of the Daleks, it just doesn't work for me at all. I'm not interested in it. I don't like it. I think Dalek Sec is weird. I don't like looking at it. I'm sorry if that's mean to say, but yeah, I just have a
It's not
really
mean.
rough time. I just can't do it. But no, let's get a little deeper in. Let's first talk about Tallulah with three L's and an H and Laszlo, because I think they're the first people that we meet in this episode. And they're so sweet and cursed, and I feel bad for them.
Me too. I honestly, I hope they're doing well. I'm really glad that Laszlo wasn't killed off. Like I thought at the
Mm-hmm.
end when I first watched these episodes that he would be, but I'm glad the Doctor fixed things, even though we didn't see him really helping Laszlo. He was
I
like,
know.
the Doctor is in, and then like cut to a flash forward and they're in Hooverville or in the park. One of those.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do like the characters of Tallulah and Laszlo and how they're tragically cursed, but how at the end they're together and I hope they're doing well.
Do you think they make it? What do you think happens to them?
Honestly, I don't know, but I could see them making it because New York is a place where you could be with a pig man hybrid and it would
Mm-hmm.
be just like a weird urban legend and like it wouldn't be as big of a thing as maybe we think it would be.
Yeah. I have my theories about what ends up happening to them, but it's a little dark, so I don't know if we want to
Oh
get into
no.
it.
Please, you gotta.
I think Laszlo unfortunately ends up passing away either from natural causes, maybe whatever the doctor did, because we don't really know. It only gave him a little bit more time, or he died because someone killed him, because which is terrible. Tallulah, I don't really know what happened to her. Maybe she became super successful. Maybe she became a rockette. Maybe she was the best dancer
Ooh.
to ever dance. Maybe she wasn't. That I don't know. But I hope they made it. I hope they are doing great. I don't really understand why he went to go live in Hooverville and she just was living wherever she lived. I don't know why he couldn't live with her. Like, I get why he couldn't live with her, but also, no, I don't.
Well, 1930 was a different time socially, so it might have been
It
that it
was.
wasn't socially acceptable. It is interesting, though. Maybe she wasn't ready to fully commit at that time to fully being with a pig man.
Yeah, maybe. But you guys let us know what you think happened to them. But I do love that scene in her dressing room. And they're talking about meeting his mom. It's so sweet. And then later in the episode, when she's telling Martha and the doctor about him, she mentions that she's still getting a white rose every single night.
No, I find that so sweet that he leaves a rose still, even though he's hiding in the shadows because he's ashamed of what he now looks like.
Ugh, yeah, it is really sad. But then we get Martha and Ten, who end up in New York, and they again do the thing of like, well, we said one trip, but might as well do one more.
And just like make up your mind, 10, please.
He's just
Give
like
Martha the
dragging
key.
her along for so long. It's like, just give her
Yeah.
key, make it official. What are we doing?
What are we doing? In the last episode, she was literally kidnapped and you didn't give her a key then after all that?
No, it's and even at the end of this, nothing has changed.
No, nothing has, unfortunately. Just a side note, I do like the shot of them landing at the beginning
Mm,
of this episode, right at the base of the Statue of Liberty. I do think
me
that is
too.
really cool.
Yeah, I do like that shot as well. And Ten saying, "Have you met my friend?" It's very fun. Ten looks really great in the blue suit, walking around quote unquote Central Park. I just really love the setting, and with the blue suit, I
Mm,
just think it looks really good.
it definitely looks really good.
Yeah. And then poor Martha's wearing the same outfit she has been wearing since the end of Smith and Jones.
And it's the way Rose changed outfits in between Rose and Aliens in London World War III when she came back 18 months later. So
Hmm.
Martha could have changed. And why they chose Martha to not change, I really don't know and don't understand.
It's disrespectful. Like, she, think about everything that has happened to her. She had to go through like Shakespeare times, spent the night. She has slept in
Mhm.
those clothes who knows how many times.
Was kidnapped in those clothes? Was chased by
Hmm.
Queen Elizabeth in those clothes?
Like, was right next to the face of Beau as he died in those clothes.
And like a fully dead Senate. So she really needed new clothes. And
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't understand the choice.
Also, since we're talking about Martha, she literally is forced to go to the sewers in this episode. It just keeps getting worse.
And then she is kidnapped by a pig.
Yo.
She's abducted by a pig and taken to the Daleks.
Hmm.
I don't know what's worse than that, honestly.
And somehow it gets worse from here on out.
It really does, because something I noticed in these two episodes that I didn't really catch on to before, but it's when Martha is talking to Tallulah about unrequited love, basically regarding the doctor, and Tallulah is like, "Oh, I should have realized he's into musical theater, huh?" And that is hilarious because stuff like that continues throughout both of these episodes, where Tallulah just makes little comments like at the end of, I think, Evolution of the Daleks, when they're on the Empire State Building, and Martha being like, "He's just so different," and Tallulah's like, "Yeah." And I don't know, I just found that really funny, of
It
like that
is. Tallulah has
miscommunication.
some. No, it is really funny. And Tallulah has some great one-liners and moments in these episodes. I love when they're at the theater and at the end of Evolution of the Daleks, and Tallulah says to the doctor, I know you're a fan of musical theater, but like, come on, why are we here?
No, that is really funny. Also, why were they there? Like, why choose the theater? I mean, they explain it, but again, why the
Did
theater?
they? What was the explanation? And I just watched it.
Honestly, I don't remember. It's kind of fuzzy, but something about being a good place to face the Daleks.
You know what? Fair enough. And I I'm okay with it because it gave us that moment of David Tennant just walking on the rows of chairs, and I just really love it. I don't know why.
That's actually really funny. But yeah, that whole like gag throughout these two episodes with Tallulah and Martha is kind of funny.
It's great.
Although it's sad for Martha because poor Martha has unrequited love, and I don't know how much we'll get into this, and because I feel like this is a conversation we can have even in future episodes that are coming up, where it's just I don't like I want to know the reasoning why the main part of Martha's arc for most of this season is her being in love with the doctor and him not being in love with her. Like, yeah, it's good to see that the doctor doesn't fall in love with everyone he travels with, and Rose clearly meant a lot to him. We love Rose so much, and I'm so glad like he's not just acting like nothing happened. But why is such a big part of Martha's arc just her being in love with the doctor? Like, that's a lot of the questions she's asking in these episodes. Like, why couldn't there have been more?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and it does feel like the writers are just making things harder for her for no good reason, and making it harder for the viewer to really get not invested, but to just kind of, if you're trying to introduce this whole new companion and move on from Rose, you're kind of making it hard for the viewer to do that
Mm-hmm.
when you're making her also have feelings for the doctor and also for Rose to be mentioned like every single episode. It just doesn't really make sense. I don't really see a reason for it. And I think you can show the doctor's grief and how much he misses Rose without Martha having this like unrequited one side romance with the doctor. It just doesn't really make sense for her character, and I think she would have like snapped out of it a lot sooner than they made her.
I agree with that a lot. In that, like, the character of Martha, it would make so much more sense if she snapped out of it, like, after, like, the second or third episode of series 3.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, and it kind of hurts their dynamic in a way, which is hard because
Mm-hmm.
they they are such good actors and they do play off each other really well.
For sure.
Okay, I want to talk about Frank and Solomon in Hooverville. Frank So Andrew Garfield is here randomly. Love to see it. But Frank just really he has a lot to do, but also not a lot. He like disappears randomly throughout the episodes.
And one part, he does not disappear randomly. He is taken hostage by the pigs and left behind. And obviously, Ten and the others couldn't really help him when he was being dragged off by the pigs. And he was fine in the end. But another reason I don't like this two-parter, they really messed with my emotions with my man Andrew Garfield.
No, they do. It is rude. And I was going to mention it's so weird to me how Solomon is just okay with like leaving him behind
Yeah.
and is like, we can't go back. Like, we're not gonna do more to help him. That's it.
And in the next minute, he's literally like, "We can't lose anyone else. You just lost Andrew Garfield, Solomon."
We've lost everyone. Like, it's too late.
And yes, I know that Andrew Garfield's character's name is Frank, but last night when I was writing my notes, I forgot his name was Frank. So that's why I keep referring to him as Andrew Garfield.
I love that. I really think we need to let Andrew Garfield come back to the show as like a
Yes.
new character. He needs some redemption. He's not given his flowers like he should be, and he shouldn't be forced to do that terrible accent.
He really tried. His American accent has come a long way since then.
It has. We're proud of you, Andrew. Besides the moment where Solomon is completely okay with letting Frank get kidnapped by the pig people, I really, really like the character of Solomon and how he kind of takes care of everyone in Hooverville and is running everything. There's a moment I really, really love between him and the doctor when he asks the doctor where he's from, and Ten says something like, "Oh, just passing through." And Solomon says he's not a fool. And it kind of stops the doctor in his tracks for a minute and he has to go like, no, you're right. Like, I'm sorry, almost. And I just really like that moment. It's really short, very
Mm.
simple, but it kind of just forces the doctor to take a look at himself for a moment and remember who he's talking to, and that these aren't just, simple people and who are just kind of down on their luck. Like, Solomon's a really smart man, and he's not dumb. He's not a fool, and he knows that there's some more going on with the doctor than he's letting on. And I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's hard to explain. I just really like that small moment.
I agree with you. I really appreciate that small moment. And I really think, like, out of this whole episode, Solomon is probably the strongest, like, side character. I would say between Solomon and Laszlo, like, both of them are really solid for me. And it's always so sad when Solomon is exterminated trying to, like, protect his people in Hooverville. And he's dedicated so much of himself to like keeping everything safe and breaking up fights, and he noticed the disappearances and was told the doctor like, hey, these people aren't just like randomly going somewhere else, they're being taken, like they're leaving things behind. And that just makes his death so much sadder.
His stuff, it really is just terrible. And the speech he gives to the Daleks,
Yeah.
it really speaks to who he is as a person, because he's seen this thing that he's never seen before that would shock anyone from that time.
Yeah.
And he's trying to make peace. He's trying to find a way to not fight, even after they were all just attacked. He's trying to find peace. He's trying to find a middle ground, trying to talk to the Daleks, and they just kill him, and it's so horrible.
Completely.
One thing I want to mention about the Daleks, I do really like the reveal of them in this episode, where there's the two guys talking by the elevators, and then the elevator comes down and the thing in the center brightens up, and then it opens and we see the Dalek. I do think that's a really cool shot. I like how the elevator kind of
Mm-hmm.
gives it away before we even see it, and then there's the Dalek. I think that's a really good moment.
I do really like that moment and the design of the elevators. I do love the little nods and hints whenever the Daleks reappear like that.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of all the Daleks, basically their main point, their whole goal in these two episodes is that because there's only 4 of them that survived that used the emergency temporal shift, they need to make more Daleks. But they don't have enough energy because of this emergency temporal shift. And they've tried to experiment and it hasn't worked out well. So, like, they can't create new pure Daleks. So, the next best thing, I guess, is Dalek having the idea for a human Dalek hybrid. And I don't quite understand how they have the energy for that.
I know.
Like, I feel like that would be really complicated. I don't know. But yeah, they just basically don't want to go extinct, and they can't do their usual killing spree because they don't have enough energy. So basically their whole philosophy in these 2 episodes, until, the other Daleks side eye each other and gossip about Dalek and are like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
what's the tea? What do you think about our leader? He's being a little weird, a little too human. And then they literally execute him, which is sad. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie, like that part is sad, especially because they do it in front of 10 and they murder the human Dalek hybrids. Are they Time
Don't
Lord
get me started.
Dalek? Girl,
They're like human Dalek Time Lord hybrids.
I don't know. Whatever they are, they're a new species and they get murdered, and it's a whole big thing for 10, and it's very emotional. But all of it, there's just so many strings. So many strings.
There are, yeah. Like you mentioned, I do really find their motivation really interesting. I forget the guy's name, but the guy who ends up becoming Dalek, I really like the conversation that he has with Dalek, where they're overlooking the New York skyline, and the Dalek is talking about how, we're gone. Like, we are the last of the Daleks, and yet the human race keeps going. You are
Mm-hmm.
still there all throughout time, all throughout history. And I do find that really interesting. And the moment, I forget when they say it, but they're talking about, like, okay, if Daleks are so great, why is there only four of us in the whole
Yeah.
universe? So I do find that aspect of the story really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But from there, when we get the humanoid Dalek sec, it just, yeah, I've already said it. It just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it all goes downhill from there.
But before that, we get the gang, going through the sewers, and then they
Mm-hmm.
meet Tallulah with three L's and an H, and we get
They do.
some Martha Tallulah hot girly chats, and I love to see it.
Me too. And I noticed for the first time in this episode, like while Martha is talking to Tallulah, she's swatching the red lipstick on her hand.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's cute.
Yeah. Something I do just have a slight problem with. This is a very doctor thing to do. Don't fully understand it. But Ten found this like non-human genetically altered brain and he just pulls it out of who knows where and it's just like basically Tallulah. Do you know what kind of brain this is? I mean, not he doesn't exactly say that, but he basically says that.
Yeah.
And I just want to know why. Why do you think she would know?
I don't know. I did find that really funny. Yeah. One line from Tallulah that I really love is when she's talking about how she still has to go out and perform even with a broken heart.
Mm,
She talks about how Martha's like, "You're the talent. Like, you can say or do whatever you want." And she's like, "That's not how it works. I'm just one missed rent away from ending up in Hooverville myself." And it's just, I really like the glimpses into this time period that we get. I know you and I
mm-hmm.
are both, have always really been interested in the Great Depression and that time in history. So I really do appreciate the glimpses we get from someone like Tallulah, whose life looks really glamorous, but the weight of what's happening in the United States and the world is still very much weighing heavy on her and affecting her.
Completely. And I do like a lot that Hooverville is included in this episode because it is just such like a stark reminder and realization of what so
Hmm.
many people were going through this time period.
Yeah, no, it is really sad to see just these people who have already gone through so much and have so little, and then to see the Daleks like take everything from them and turn them into these pig human slaves and take their minds. It's crazy.
It's insane.
I really love the Doctor's reaction to seeing the Dalek for the first time while he's down in the sewers
Mm-hmm.
with Tallulah.
You just see it all in his
Mm-hmm.
expression and his eyes. He is angry, he is sad, he is broken, especially because we hear him literally say, they survive. They always survive while I lose everything.
Oh, so good.
So good. That line
Yeah.
does eat. I'm not going to lie.
It it really does. And you can just see it written on his face, he's thinking about Doomsday and Rose, and that is all still very fresh for him here.
Yeah. It just happened for him, basically.
But yeah, I do love that moment. And in the next episode, I love him, yelling at the Dalek in the sky, just kill me. Like, that's, ooh, such a good moment. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of great moments between the Doctor and the Daleks in this story. One moment that really bugs me is at the end of Daleks in Manhattan when they finally find Laszlo and he's like hiding his face and he's like, "Don't look at me, don't come near me." And Tallulah just keeps asking, "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" And Laszlo's talking about, I forget what he says, but he's either talking about the rose or talking about her, something to do with her. And she's like, "Who are you?" It's like, girl, figure it out. Like, oh, it just takes her so long and it drives me crazy. But I do love the moment where she finally looks at him and she just like softly says like, Laszlo, my Laszlo, like what did they do to you? That the way she delivers that is like, so heart-wrenching, and I love it.
Same, but that one part where she asks who are you 5 million times, it gets on my nerves. Like, girl, just walk into
Yeah.
the shadows. See who it is.
Like it's the same voice. Like what are
I
we
know.
doing?
I know, but I do really like that her reaction isn't one of like disgust or fear or anything like
Me
that.
too.
At the end of Daleks in Manhattan, or towards the end of that episode, when the Daleks come to the camp and, they kill Solomon, the doctor's like, kill me now. And then Dalek is like, wait, don't kill the doctor. And the Daleks are like, excuse me?
They're
That is a great
pissed.
moment. They're so pissed, but Loki is a great moment. Something that annoys me though is the doctor leaves Martha and he leaves her with a psychic paper, but like he couldn't whisper anything to her.
Or like psychically leave a message on the psychic paper.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. He's just like, oh, she'll figure it out. When he didn't even fully know what was going to happen. And like, thankfully, Martha is the queen she is because she figured out
Mm-hmm.
the Dalekanium was going to be on something big. And she figured out it was the Empire State Building. And her, Tallulah, and Lasso went. Sorry. Her, Tallulah, and Andrew Garfield went. But like, Ten really expected her to like do all that work without a single word.
Yeah, and all he says is thank you very much or whatever he says. No,
And then
it's
winks. Yeah.
no. And mind you, this is only her third trip.
That's actually crazy.
I know. And already like having to do all this work, she like helps to heal everyone after the attack and like bandage people up. And then you're right, she like somehow puts all this together about the Dalek Canyon and the Empire State Building. And then I want to jump forward a little bit, but when they're in the Empire State Building and the doctor has to like go up a few floors to do whatever he was doing, I don't even know. And Martha, Laszlo, Tallulah, and I think Andrew Garfield is there. They're staying down to like fight off the pig people, and Ten tells her directly, "You have to stay and fight." And I just think that is just so interesting and really just speaks to their whole dynamic. And it's not the last time he's going to tell her that in the series. And there's just so many points where the doctor kind of uses Martha or turns her into this like wannabe soldier and fighter and someone who has to like almost do his dirty work for him, the things that he pretends to not do, and that's not him. He kind of just makes her do it. And I don't know, I just think that moment just really kind of it foreshadows things to come and just speaks to their dynamic in a really interesting way.
That's a really good point. Going back to the beginning of evolution of the Daleks, I do love the whole exchange where they're all lined up, Ten and everyone else is like lined up for the Daleks, and all of a sudden music starts playing and the Daleks are like, what is that? And then Ten just pops around the corner and he's like, hello, surprise, boo, etc. And then the Daleks are just like, Doctor? You're here?
I do love that moment.
Every time the Daleks realize the Doctor is like there with them in any situation, it's always really comical, their reaction.
I know. The doctor? No,
the Doctor really survived?
Like, duh. Come on.
And they say, like, the most obvious thing. They're like, Doctor? The enemy of the Daleks. Like, yes, we know.
Like, yeah. Especially because we just saw these Daleks. We were just with them.
We were literally just with them.
One thing that's really sad and kind of overlooked in this episode is that the dogs have stolen 1,000 people just to be part of their final experiment. That's not including all the people they've captured to be turned into pig people. But they have 1,000 people whose lives they've stolen and basically turned into these empty shells to become
Mhm.
like these Dalek human hybrids.
Yeah, it's atrocious. I'm so fuzzy on the details and quite honestly confused. But whenever the gamma ray would hit the top of the Empire State Building with all the Dalekinium, would every human become the hybrid?
No, just all the people that were like hooked up to the gene flow or genome, whatever it was called.
Oh, interesting. I don't know why I thought it would be like the whole population.
No.
Okay.
One line from Tallulah that I really love is when she's looking out at the city and she says, you know, if aliens from outer space were gonna come to Earth, it's no wonder they came here. And I don't know, I just really love that line for some reason.
That is a sweet line. And I really am glad that Tallulah accepted the aliens. Like, at first, she was like, aliens are real? But after that, that was like the last we heard. Sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, when side characters and like different episodes of Doctor Who are like, I can't get over this. Aliens? I'm like, shh, please be quiet.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, let's just ignore the thing right in front of you, but okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's really funny the conversation Martha and Tallulah have after that moment when Martha's telling her about Rose and how when the doctor sees her, it's like he's imagining someone else. And
Mm.
instead of saying anything comforting, Tallulah just goes, "Oh, well, at least you're not Laszlo and I. Like, we have no future." And she just like starts going off about her and Laszlo, which I just think is really funny.
No, it is. It's really funny. Poor Martha, but really hilarious.
Yeah.
And the Daleks at this point have like wanted to work with 10 because Dalek thinks 10 can really help with like the hybrid situation and then like take them all to a new planet and like reestablish them. And 10 is like all for it to the point he's there with Laszlo and he has his back turned to the other Daleks. And one of the other Daleks literally fixates on 10 like he was about to exterminate 10.
I did not notice that, but that's crazy.
Yeah, and I just want to know, 10, why do you turn your back to the Daleks?
No, crazy.
And then 10 goes to the top of the Empire State Building to remove the Dalekanium. Multiple questions. Don't get me started, even though I'm already gonna start. Okay, first off, why did 10 have to be electrocuted? Why didn't he regenerate? Did he use regeneration energy to stay alive? Is it a special Time Lord thing? There was still some Dalekanium on the Empire State Building, so that affected some of the people. But, like, altogether, why any of that?
Yeah, I also have those questions. It's kind of crazy he like didn't just fall off completely because when we see him like lying up there, he's like at the edge. It's crazy. I can accept, you know, he wouldn't regenerate because I don't know, he can just handle it, but it is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and while that's all happening, Martha is like concocting a solution to basically fry the elevator full of pigs, which is kind of crazy.
Because the doctor, like I mentioned earlier, this is when the doctor, you know, was like, no, you have to stay behind and fight. So he knew that they were going to have to like stop the pig people from coming up so they could like get rid of the Dalek Ganium or whatever. And so he makes her do all the dirty work and she has to go do that. And then she even says later, like, I just killed all these people. And Laszlo's like, no, they're already dead. Like, they were killed by the Daleks a long time ago. But still, like, she's the one that has to grapple with that. And this isn't the last time this happens to her.
No, it's not. And there's not even any resolution she has with the doctor. It's not like they have a conversation about this. All that's said is like her yelling at him that he's getting careless, which is true. But that's basically it. And then he wakes up, but it's just like, why? Why is he making her do all the dirty work? Like, they don't even talk about her killing all the pigs.
No.
Like, if it was Rose, if it was Donna, if it was one of the other companions, 10 would have been like right there afterwards.
No, he does not care at all what happens
Mm-mm.
to Martha. It's so sad. And you're right, he is very careless in this episode. Like, first going on the Empire State Building, dropping the Sonic, and then earlier when he's like yelling, Kill me at the Daleks, like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? And even like later on in the theater, very careless.
And my question is this like what they truly wanted for the 10th Doctor in these 2 episodes? Or is it like genuinely just like the way it was written and a writing? I don't know if like writing issue would be the right term, but is it more the writing or is it truly how they wanted 10 to be in these episodes?
I don't know, because I kind of like stock it all up to his grief from Doomsday is just very raw in these
Mm,
episodes. And I think
true.
the Daleks being a part of these episodes makes it even worse for him. But I would like to have seen, I don't know, just like maybe a 2-minute conversation between him and Martha at the end where, she talks about what she had to do, he talks about what he did, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I wish we got more of that, because you're right, like any other companion, if it was Rose or Donna, they'd be having those tough conversations.
For sure. But after all of this, they have their big ol' standoff in the theater.
And I do love the moment where Ten is trying to tell Martha, to go back to Hooverville, and she's, not going to listen as she should. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, That's an order. Like, okay, what do you think that's going to do? And she says, What does that make you then? Some kind of Dalek? And she ate
Mm-hmm.
so hard with that line. It's so good. Side note, that needs to be in the whatever Martha Jones edit you end up making.
Okay.
Um,
Noted.
but it's so good. She really eats him up. It's such a great line, and it's why we love her.
We love Martha Jones on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And shocker, for the 57th time, the Daleks are like, exterminate the Doctor. And another shocker, the hybrids, the idea didn't go to plan.
Of course not. No.
Because why would it? I will say the emotions Ten has in this scene are really sad to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like another reminder of how awful the Daleks are. I don't know why I said that like it was a question, that last part. It's not a question. They are awful and terrible. But 2 of the Daleks that had turned on Dalek apparently they die, but I didn't really see that. Because at the end, Dalek Khan is the only one left, and I'm just confused.
I think it's because don't the like human Dalek Time Lords, whatever you want to call them, don't they like shoot the Daleks?
Actually, I don't remember enough.
I think that's what happens, because they end up all
Okay.
like shooting at each other in the theater.
Oh, that's right.
And then Dalek Khan, he like kills all the Dalek human Time Lords, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really sad. And I really like the moment earlier when the one guy is like, well, why? Well, why? And he's like, you're not Ore Masters and we're not Daleks. I do really like that. And later the Doctor's reaction to this genocide and the fact that they killed all these people. I don't know if because of what happened, if everyone got converted, but they kidnapped 1,000 people to do this. So that's
Yeah.
1,000 people, a whole new race just instantly wiped out moments after it was
Yeah.
created. It's dark for this like crazy
It is.
silly Dalek in New York two-parter. Like if you really think about it, you're like, oh my gosh.
I know, and they don't really. It's not that they had to emphasize on it, but it's like it's not one of the biggest points of this episode, I feel.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not at all. I do
And
like
so-
later though when the Dalek is when the Doctor's confronting Dalek Khan and he says, I've already witnessed one genocide. I don't want to be the cause of another. But then of course
Yeah.
Dalek Khan is able to then get away.
Dalek Khan just nopes out with the stupid emergency temporal shift that the Daleks can apparently do.
Yeah.
And then Laszlo was like, "Oh, I'm dying," and the doctor's like, "The doctor's in," and then
Mm-hmm.
it's the end of the episode, and Laszlo and Tallulah are on their way, and Martha and Ten head back to the TARDIS, and Martha tells Ten that, hey, it just proves it, I suppose. There's someone for everyone. Ten's
Oh,
response is maybe.
maybe. Like, come on.
But really quick, the very last thing that is asked at the end of this episode is Martha asking Ten if he will see Dalek Khan again. And Ten says yes. And I wonder when or if that will be.
I wonder.
We will find out.
We sure will.
Yeah, but all in all, so many things I don't like about these episodes. Dalek Sec is an ick. Andrew
Mm-hmm.
Garfield wasn't utilized the way he could have been.
No, not at all.
The hybrid was interesting. Solomon got exterminated. But I will end on a positive note. I do like Tallulah and Laszlo. Wish them the best. I really do hope they
Mm-hmm.
made it out and that my theory was correct and not yours, because yours is dark.
I also want your theory to be correct.
Thank you.
There's a lot of contenders, but who is the star of the show?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna have to go with Laszlo. Okay, I can't help it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, explain.
I don't know. I just kind of liked his whole story arc
Mm.
and how he was like hiding in the shadows, but like Tallulah helped him to like realize like he didn't have to, and he was able to live in Hooverville. I don't know. I really like him. I would have to
He
say
does really
my
help us out, like, so much in this episode.
no, he really does. He really helps out the Doctor so much, and he's really good ally for the Doctor with this episode, which is another reason why I really like him. I
Mhm.
will say though, like another person I would have to say is Solomon. But
Mhm.
what about you?
Yes. Solomon was also a contender for me. He's a great character. I love what he stands for, but I have to go with Tallulah because
Mm.
I'm just obsessed with her. I love her. I love that ridiculous accent. Her performance, she's just like so fun. And I love having her like, run around with us. And everything with her and Laszlo is like sweet and sad. And I love it. So she's the star of the show for me.
What is the heart of this episode?
That is tough. I really don't know. I guess maybe the heart of this episode is the old lesson that every companion must learn at some point in because it happens to nearly every single one where they meet a Dalek and they're like, maybe the Daleks can be good. And it's like, oh, actually no they can't. The Daleks are always bad. It never ends well. If you see a Dalek, you should run in the other direction. So I guess unfortunately it's that the Daleks will never change and don't just stay away.
I agree with you.
Do we have any reviews from the past?
Yes, we sure do. This first review I have is from IMDb by the user movieman_Kev. It was written on May 7th, 2008, and he wrote saying, sadly, the second half of a story that should not have even been told in one episode. The same flaws that plagued the previous episode Daleks in Manhattan are present here as well. Horrid acting by the guest stars. Luckily, some of those overacted characters die. Excuse
uh,
you. Are you talking about Solomon?
wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
They continue by saying a flawed storyline, shoddy characterization, and all of these elements combine to make this pretty much the worst Dalek centered episode in, well, ever. It's a pity it marred an otherwise great series thus far. If future appearances will be like this, perhaps it's time to put the Dalekanium encrusted ones on ice for the foreseeable future.
I do agree that it's the worst Dalek story. I think that's honestly kind of still true, if my memory
Yeah.
serves me correctly, but I don't know. The supporting cast, like, there's definitely some not great acting moments, and it's definitely not my favorite supporting cast we ever have, but
Same.
they're they're the only kind of interesting part of this episode, so I kind of have to hold on to them because I just cannot care about what's going on with the Daleks.
Same. This last review I have was written by the user PJGS200 on IMDb. This was written on October 26th, 2016.
Wow.
And I'm going to paraphrase their review, but they said, I liked the fact that the Daleks were trying to evolve, but the human Dalek just looked embarrassing. Even for Doctor Who, I can't justify how bad it looked. They continue by saying, there were plot holes here and there, and the pigs were again completely unnecessary to the story, except for having Laszlo turn into one. In series 1 and 2, the Daleks were menacing and ruthless and exciting for the most part. Last week kept the upward trend going on with the Daleks, but with the addition of the Dalek-Sec hybrid and the human Dalek converts, this episode has almost ruined the Daleks for me. Evolution of the Daleks isn't a bad episode, but it certainly isn't a good one, or one I would ever show to someone who hasn't seen Doctor Who. In addition, it almost dethroned the Daleks as my favorite Who villains.
Wow. Yeah, it is kind of hard to, because Parting of the Ways and Doomsday, those are such strong episodes and such strong
Yeah,
stories. So it is kind of hard to have them here in this. It just doesn't work as well.
I completely agree with you.
Do we have any final thoughts?
No, I think that honestly is it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad we powered through these episodes and we don't really have to talk about them again. They're obviously
Me too.
not our favorites, and if they're your favorites, that's totally fine, because that's the beauty of being in the Doctor Who world. Like, we can have
Mhm.
very differing opinions about episodes, but in saying that, again, they're not our fave. But yeah, we will be back next week with the Lazarus experiment.
We sure will be. But until then, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at TimeyWimeyPod, and email us anything and everything to.
timey-wimeypod@gmail.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on your podcast listening platform.
And we will see you guys next week.
Ta-ra!
Ta-ra!